Yeah, happy Friday the 13th, and welcome to another session of uh, Transforming the Teaching and Learning Environment virtual conference. I'm Bob Ailes, I'm your moderator. Don't forget, this year we're sponsored by the Journal of Educators Online, JEO. Check it out. It's got some excellent uh, refereed articles dating back to 2004. Just go to thejeo.com and explore. And I think you'll find some interesting articles. We have with us today Mark Minnick, who is the Dean of Business and Applied Technology at Harford Community College in Maryland. He spent 23 years in the corporate sector and transitioned in 2014 to a career in academia. And he is a champion for innovative use of AI in the classroom. Every school needs a champion for AI or other projects to be successful. We also have Regina Ray, who's a professor of psychology and has 30 years of experience in higher ed. Her focus has been on student success and assessment of learning, and is aware that the learning environment is always evolving. As you can see, today they're going to talk about AI, decreasing the bad, increasing the good. So let me turn it over to Mark and Regina.
Thanks, Bob, and we are happy to be here just to share some of the experiences and initiatives we're doing on our campus that I'm sure all campuses around the country are looking into how to best tackle AI usage. So we wanted to give some experiences that we've had, and just we'll go through that today. And by all means, please feel free to interact, ask questions, any of those things. Um, so, as Bob had stated, we're both from Harford Community College, which we're located in Bel Air, Maryland, which is about 45 minutes north of Baltimore and about an hour south of Philadelphia. So we're right in the corridor between Philly and Washington, D.C. We have a lot of AI initiatives happening in our county. We have the Army Proving Ground at APG. Which is our biggest employer in the county, but they are looking to become one of the um, nation's AI headquarters. So it's definitely something that happens a lot in the area. Just a few things that we are investigating at Harford on how to bring AI to campus, or at least bring an awareness to campus. We have a team that's part of the AACNU AI Institute program. So that's a year-long education program working with other colleges in the AACNU organization to learn about best practices for AI. We have another team that is working on an NSF grant for putting AI into different curriculum. We have our internal Center for Teaching and Learning group who has done a number of initiatives on trainings on AI, has spotlighted faculty who use AI to really try to get a peer-to-peer comfort zone on how AI can be utilized in classrooms. And our library staff has created a LibGuide on how the generative AI toolbox. So one of the things that we did through the Institute is we ran a survey just to get a feeling on campus as to how AI is being used, or even just the knowledge of AI. And I wanted to just share a few highlights from some of the results that we had. And I would imagine if you ran similar questions on your campuses, you would see similar responses. So we asked a question on which selection best characterize your current knowledge about AI. And as you can see here, at this time, and this survey was run in fall, so it was around September. And I imagine when we are planning on rerunning the same survey to see if anything changes towards the end of the year. About 51% at the time really had no knowledge about really what AI can do or AI usage. The other 49% were split between limited. There was a I'm sorry, let me rephrase. It's none had a small percentage. Sorry, I was looking at the colors poorly. None had a small, some were limited. Average was 51%. 15% had a deep knowledge of AI. So that was an interesting take on that. If we then looked at how are they currently engaged with AI, 45% were at the beginning level, 26% was consistent. Um, 22% weren't using it whatsoever. So we still had a majority of campus which still are not using AI. They're aware of it, but not necessarily using it. We then took it one step further to ask, what's the tools that you're currently using? And we do believe that this is going to change because of some of the initiatives we had, and I'll just highlight a few. ChatGPT obviously is the one that it was the standard everybody went to initially. We are a Microsoft school. We use Office 365, so Copilot is definitely something we use. I want to point out the one at the very bottom, Boodlebox. Boodlebox was, as you saw at the time that we sent the survey out back in the fall, was only being used by 2 people who responded to the survey. Since then, we've had a lot of conversation about Boodlebox and presentations on Boodlebox. And if you haven't looked at it, Boodlebox is really a generative AI that's geared towards higher ed, giving you a lot of applications to build syllabus, to help formulate assignments, and all those other options. It's a neat tool because it links to all the other options out there. So it feeds in from ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, and you can ask the same question for different areas. So I definitely would recommend that you take a minute if you haven't looked at that to take a look to see at what that could give you. We then gathered based off of all this information, what's the general attitude towards AI on campus? And as you can see, 56% showed that they felt it could improve their work. 57% supported integrating it into curriculum, and about 60% wanted the college to do some sort of investment, some sort of outward education to help staff, faculty, curriculum to find ways to incorporate AI, better resources for staff. It comes down to whenever new tools are available for work-related issues and or teaching, everybody wants to make sure that the commitment is there from the college, and how can we continue to get that to flow. So I thought this was a good starting point because I don't feel we're much different than other campuses out there on the different variations. One of the next things we've done is we've tried to develop a college AI statement, and I'm going to just share that with you. It's kind of winded. There's a lot of, administrative ease in this language. And essentially, what it says is why the college supports generative AI in accordance with course and program goals. Students should use these tools responsibly and with integrity. And that each instructor would then let the students know how to use it in their class and to what availability to use it in this class. One of the things that we had a speaker come out. We had a big AI conference in January where we shared the survey results, and our plenary, our opening presenter, to me, gave one of the best opening remarks about how AI fits in the classroom. And her response was, it doesn't fit for everybody. And honestly, I think that was a nice message to hear, because there are faculty that sometimes feel that they're being pressured that AI needs to be used all the time because that's where it's going. But her point was, there's nothing wrong with still bringing out the blue books if that's the way you want to get results. But there's also nothing wrong with if you want to dive right in and really use it to the fullest extent. It fits what you feel fits within your context of it. But then the follow-up message, the asterisk I want to say that she put on that message was, if you decide not to use it, it's important for us to still tell our students why. Let them know, these are my thoughts on AI. I understand that other faculty might be using it. I understand something you're being faced with. This is why I don't want to use it in my class. I think having the open communication, and it's kind of like what this policy leads to. Each instructor has their own policy. Don't just say you can't use it. Explain why, because students are constantly being faced with it, and it's definitely out there. but let them know the reasons why you're choosing not to use it. And then at the very end, I'll give you maybe a simple tool for you to use in your class to show how you can use it in a way that doesn't affect really the curriculum that you're teaching or anything else. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Regina, who's more in the classroom, to share with some of her experiences.
So obviously I have that college statement, but I have an additional syllabus statement where I would say Mark is flying the AI kite. I'm kind of like the Rock saying, let's reel this in, let's reel this in. I'm not ready. But I also recognize that this is part of the world, and not only does it need navigated, it needs embraced. And so my journey is probably a little longer in figuring out how to make that happen. But my first experience with AI in the classroom, of course, was students abusing it and misusing it. So recognizing that just like you can't copy your neighbor's work, you can't copy ChatGPT's work. The most important thing of my statement here for me is the bottom part. Suspect a violation of academic integrity will result in, I want some choices, because I recognize that some students may not know that what they're doing is wrong, whereas others may be 100% doing it so they don't have to do the work. So I might give you a do-over of the assignment in the test center where you're monitored and you're not using your devices. It might be a failing grade, or it might be a referral to administration for further disciplinary action. In truth, I don't know if that's a thing, but it's scary enough that it seems to make a difference. So there are some acceptable uses of AI in my classroom. I think idea generation is great. Sometimes I don't know where to start. Sometimes my students don't know where to start. But with anything, yeah, you have to be wise. Cautionary example, 1/3 of my honors. By the way, my students who violate AI policies the most tend to be honors students and nursing students. I have some ideas why that is, but we're working to get to a place of use this wisely. 1/3 of the honors students had the exact same 3 research paper topic choices. Obviously, and in conversation with them, they got them from AI, sounded good. I didn't know what to pick. Consequence, by the end of the semester, they absolutely hated their topic because it wasn't something they chose. It wasn't something they were embracing. Great for generating ideas, great for maybe an outline, but it needs to be yours. You need to think as well. Spell check grammar, please. Please, 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 please. I do it. It has saved me a lot of having to look things up. I am not a great speller. I think in general, my students' spelling and grammar has improved. However, again, cautionary example, the most common mistake I see students make is selecting defiantly when they get the drop-down menu, when they really mean definitely. I defiantly agree with this theory. I've read that so many times. And I guess really, if you don't know how to spell definitely, you don't know that defiantly isn't how I sound it out, maybe? I don't know. You still have to check. Summarizing articles for better understanding. I think this is great. I've had students say, this has helped me so much. It put it into a language I could understand. Of course, sometimes in that summarization, there is misinformation. I see this a lot when it's articles about the brain and the parts of the brain that have different functions. AI tends to be more general as opposed to specific. Finally, one of my favorite, because boy, have the email messages improved. I no longer get something from Skater Girl 12 that says, what I miss, can I make it up, and nothing else. I get really well written emails that I'm assuming are AI because I get examples like this. This is an actual student email. I'm glad they went to AI. I'm glad they copied what AI had to say. They just didn't take the time to read it and fill in the blanks that AI so nicely provided. And it's not just once that this has happened. So great uses, but we still have to think. Go ahead, Mark. So we can take a few moments and converse about this. It looks like there's 11. If you're not into that, we'll move on quickly. But what do you consider acceptable use of AI in your learning environment? Anyone care to share?
Yeah, I guess I'll go ahead and share since everybody else is being shy. Yeah, I think that I've become okay with them using it as long as they're using it in an ethical and responsible manner. A lot what you were talking about, and I think they have to. The other thing I've incorporated is they have to have that AI honesty note at the end of all of their submissions. And interesting enough, I just revised all of my classes and they're starting to roll now. And it's interesting because as I was seeing over 90, probably over 95% of students using AI, I just graded an assignment yesterday where I think it has some of them a little scared.
Okay.
Yeah, which I'm finding really interesting because
Yeah.
it wasn't as obvious to me. And then they're all saying, I did not use AI.
Yeah.
Where I have all this disclosure in my class now, how to use it ethically, responsibly, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, so that's what's going on with me.
And that makes sense. I could see where there would be a fear of it because, well, gosh, is in another class, this might be not communicated well that this is not okay. And now I'm hearing it is okay for these things, but I've been trained this way now. So that's interesting. That makes sense.
I think that kind of mirrors some of even the statistics I shared as far as just staff and faculty. 22% aren't really engaged with it. It's the same. Some students don't want to. There's that trepidation to do it and that kind of stuff. And I liked Mina's comment in the chat also. Great tools for using, creating outline, summary of textbook chapters. I know some of our nursing staff teach the students how to use it to prepare quizzes, to study for tests kind of thing, like ask questions, like pull out some information. So definitely all good opportunities. And thank you for sharing.
Brainstorming assignments, creating outlines, summary of chapter textbooks in the chat. So obviously there's some unacceptable use. Here's my favorite example. And sadly, again, it's not the only one I've gotten like this. In a discussion post, you can read, they just copied and pasted. ChatGPT said, and then someone felt, oh gosh, this is too long. They're going to know this. I don't know what they really thought, but I could see them thinking they're going to know that this is chat. So I'm going to tell chat to make it shorter. Great idea. Don't, well, obviously don't do it at all. But I'm surprised at the amount of discussion submissions that include ChatGPT said. Now, I kind of have fixed this. I'm hoping we'll get to that in a few minutes. So we know what you consider is acceptable. I kind of assume what you consider is unacceptable. But if anyone wants to chime in, see if we have the same unacceptable uses. Obviously, you can't use it for an assignment that you had to do yourself. Anyone have something to share?
Have to
All right,
move
let's
it,
go.
Regina.
Yep. So I already said Mark's running, I'm dragging my heels, but I've made a journey, if you will. I teach psychology, so we do that. We think, we journey. My movement from catching, that was my original goal. I'm going to catch you using AI, to preventing. And when I say using AI, I mean unacceptably. So the first example I have came from Psych 214, which is Human Growth and Development. Again, a lot of nursing students. And the abridged directions for this assignment, they were to analyze a vignette that was given to them, and they were to use two different developmental psychological theories, tell why the problem happened, and then how they would solve the problem using that same theory. So for example, from a psychodynamic perspective, Susie may now be wetting the bed because her parents just divorced and she's not processed through this. And we'd solve this problem by talking it through and having her figure out what's really going on. But that same situation from a behavioral perspective might look at when they did divorce, they now had two households and their schedule was disrupted. And so we're going to use reinforcement and a timed schedule to solve the problem. All of a sudden, in a spring semester, I noticed that several students were using filter theory, which is actually a theory for finding a mate and really not a developmental theory. And they were using attachment theory. And I'm wondering why this is happening. My colleague mentions, well, what does AI say? This is what AI says. So the movement at the time was, we're going to catch them. And I used the white text technique, which I'm sure you're aware of. You just put something in white text. You can't see it because it's white. It only becomes visible if it's highlighted. The funny thing about this is it was the spring semester when I suspected the AI use. And so at the same time, when as I finish assignments in one semester, I start my changes in preparation for the following. So I put in my summer course, use the phrase red balloon twice. This assignment happens like the second, third week of the semester. We go through the spring semester, we're into the summer. I'm saying to my husband, this kid came up with this really great analogy about a red balloon with his theory assignment. Well, then the second paper did it and the third paper did it until I realized, oh my gosh, I did that. That was my white text. So this student very eloquently, just for example, to illustrate her emotions, the red balloon metaphor is used. Her sense of security feels strong, but is delicate, so it bursts quickly when she feels the separation anxiety, again, not a developmental theory from the chapter, brought on by familial changes. Using play therapy, the psychodynamic intervention, Susan can use the symbolic red balloon to readily express, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, not our textbook cited. Using this method, I caught about 17% of that class using AI. Problem is, I don't really want to catch them. I want to make sure they're meeting the student learning objectives. So if I catch them, that's great. It wasn't your work. You can't do this, but I still don't know if they met the student learning objectives. So I changed the directions and added the simple phrase presented in the lecture. AI misuse did decrease to about 6%. Could they, of course, add into AI some developmental theories from the lecture? Sure, they could, but at least now I've inconvenienced them enough that they had to look at the lecture. And so that's a little bit of a win for me. So this was one example. This is my first example of that kind of shift of, I don't really want to catch them. I want to prevent the misuse. Go ahead, Mark. An example from Psych 101, general psychology, one of the things they have to do is demonstrate that they understand what an original research article is and how to find one from a peer-reviewed scholarly journal. So in their directions, I give them a link to the database. I give them a link to a tutorial on how to use the database, a tutorial on how to understand what a research article is. I let them know they have to cite it, and I let them know they have to include their actual article along with their report. About 31% are suspected of AI use, and the it came from, first of all, using multiple articles when only one was required. Why would you do that? The references not matching the in-text citations they used, and of course, AI checkers. I changed this assignment to say the article had to come from the college database, and they had to include the URL or the permalink for that article. This was, in my opinion, tremendously successful because it decreased that misuse to about 7%. And the only time that AI misuse was expected was when they didn't have that actual permalink. Okay, so they just did their own thing. And then, of course, AI checker confirmed for me, yeah, this is not human. In terms of discussion questions, I'm really excited about this one. And I had mentioned earlier when we looked at that example that I think I have, at least for now, a solution that helps me prevent AI misuse and actually make sure the students are meeting the student learning objective. Suspected misuse of AI in discussions from a sample of 114 discussions was about 16%. And in the assignment in general, obviously taking, the whole, not just the abusers or non-abusers, the average was about 8.9 points out of 10. Some of that 10 points, 2 of that comes from grammar and spelling. 3 of that comes from 2 responses with critical thinking to other peers. So we have to break down how many points actually came from what we were trying to prevent here in the AI. I changed those directions, and this is a recent change, to require a quote from the lecture and the text be included in the discussion. This decreased that suspected AI misuse to about 2%. The sample size just slightly smaller at 105, and it took that grade up. Again, because of spelling and grammar being part, and because of peer responses being part, it's not fully reflected in that grade, but the answers have become much better. Most recent example was a question where they had to, here's a vignette. How would you study this using a correlational approach? How would you study this using an approach that ensured cause and effect? And of course, the only way to do that is through the experiment. One of the things I want them to say, the experiment has to have random assignment. A second thing I want them to say, and those things are emphasized in both the text and the lecture, and they were picking those quotes out and using them in the discussion. So this has been a huge success. Hopefully, it's not a fluke, and it continues to be. Okay, so this is my third and final example of a shift in assignment. I have one last example of a total change, but this is my last example of a shift. For several years, really, I had an assignment where students were to create original examples of both positive and negative reinforcement and how they would operantly condition a dog to go potty outside. Everyone knows how to use positive reinforcement. Dog goes potty, you give it a treat. Great. What they don't know how to do is use negative reinforcement, because they end up punishing the dog. They say something like, when the dog has an accident in the house, that's punishment. That's not negative reinforcement. Negative reinforcement is when you stop an adverse stimuli in order to increase a behavior. So, for example, you get in the car, your seatbelt dings, you plug in the seatbelt, the car stops dinging. That is negative reinforcement. The annoying dinging stops when you do the behavior the car manufacturers want you to do. They just could not successfully figure out how to negatively reinforce a dog. Really, all you have to do is keep the dog on a tight leash. Once it goes potty, you release it, assuming the dog likes to roam. That's a great example. You could yell at it until it went potty, whatever. There are lots of examples. Students struggled. Only about 16% semester after semester after semester would receive a perfect score. Went back to find that number in spring of 25. Summer of 25, I noticed, boy, they're all getting this right. I must have explained it better. Something went well. And then when I put it in AI, I said, oh, never mind. AI knows how to answer this question. And so the success rate increased from 16 to 42%. Okay, what do I do with this? This was an actual then changed assignment. I think I lost my place here. This was an actual changed assignment. And so my honors, I gave them the same assignment my honor students have, to actually create a video that shows how you would operantly condition an animal or a person. 6 of 27 did not complete the assignment. And when asked why, they said it was too much work or it would take too long, which I found interesting because they really had no problem, just going to AI to get the answer. But to actually do the work was too much work or took too much time. They're very successful, though. 21 of the 27 did complete, with 75% of them demonstrating A or B quality work. Now, it didn't exactly hit the same SLO because I gave them the option of using positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement. But I guarantee you, because they had to do it, they will have better recall of whichever one it was that they chose. So some of my assignments I've been able to adjust. Some of my assignments I've out and out changed. Again, moving from that idea of catching to preventing. I am slowly bringing in actual AI assignments where they're able to use it to their benefit, which Mark's going to talk a little bit more about.
So that's our hope. We've gone away from the constant catch, because it's gonna get harder and harder to continue to try to catch. And our job isn't to police. Our job is to educate and inform and advance and everything else. And Regina will get there. But I wanted to share just 2 quick examples. One I alluded to earlier, but this one is. I'm the Dean of Business and Applied Technology. So we have our Intro to Business class, which is BA 101, does a group project where students come together to develop a business, and they break out all the different aspects of the business. If it's a product they're selling, if it's a service project, the financial, everything you would think of. And it was, if anybody's a business teacher on the chat, it's the whole process that you learn throughout Intro to Business through the weeks. Through conversation with some faculty, we talked about, okay, well, how can we, in a positive way, show something AI can do to help enhance this project? So we came up with the suggestion of maybe having AI create a logo for the business. So as they were presenting something, you can go into AI and say, just created a business. This is the goal. This is our mission. This is the product we're selling, this kind of stuff. And can you create a logo that kind of describes it? So for today, I just quickly put into AI, no real thought or anything else, just create a logo for our presentation today. Decreasing the bad, increasing the good. This was the first one that came out. I thought, that's good enough. So went from there. But knowing from experience on how we've worked with students on this and doing other things, you can adjust this to change the colors or take the robot out and give me something more human. There are different ways that you can manipulate this, but it's the idea that this is an acceptable use, and it's not. And I know there's always then the fear that we're getting rid of jobs in marketing, we're getting rid of jobs of designers and stuff. No, it's just a tool for a designer to look at something and maybe create, and the creativity still comes to how you can speak to AI to say, shift this here, make this better here. And you can use in all those other skills that you learn on marketing, like what are good colors, like what attract things, and all those other things. So this is just an example that happened in an actual class where now we're incorporating it in to let students know that this is a proper usage of AI, and how it can benefit, and you have conversation from there. I know there's other examples just from conversations. I know we have a physics instructor on campus who actually he tells his students to put a physics dilemma into AI, and then they have to analyze whether or not the solution was correct, or where did AI miss something. So that's been useful. I wanted to share with you at campus where we did an AI discussion, and this was a simple opportunity for students to understand AI. And this can actually be used by those instructors who are, I'm not touching it, I don't want to talk about it, but in a way that you can still explain what AI is. You know, many of our students are coming still directly from high school, and AI policies in high schools are not very clear either, or they're pretty much still the can't use philosophy. So it is up to us to kind of explain and to teach ethical usage. This one I really liked, and it's just basically having the students do a syllabus reflection assignment. And as you can see, what they've done here is the instructions are use a OpenAI vehicle, whatever one you choose, and upload the syllabus, and then upload a personal learning profile. And they even gave the prompt. The prompt in the blue on the right is basically fill in the blank. This is the personal profile. I'm a 17-year-old student, think I'm majoring in psychology, and you just fill in the rest. And how do you feel about this English class? Or what are your concerns about writing, reading, and everything else? And how this worked is AI's response was basically took the learning objectives and assignments that were listed in the syllabus and connected that to the student's profile, the concerns the student might have, or the kind of learner that the student is, and highlighted specifically for that learner, if again you entered the information correctly, things that you would find beneficial about taking this class, areas where you might want to look at opportunities to get assistance, whether through faculty interaction or learning center or other resources that are available there, and positive results. And then the students were then asked to do a reflection based off of what AI said. Like, did it make sense? Do you now understand what ways to work with this class a little bit better? So this might be a simple, quick idea to try to introduce AI. Again, it's not anything that really can be, that is reflective on a major assignment that you're afraid the students would use, but it helps show internally some positive benefits on how the two pieces can be brought together: the humanities of AI, the humanities aspect, as well as the technology aspect of AI. That is pretty much what we have to share with you today. We are happy to continue to discuss any additional questions or comments that you might have. Feel free to ask. If not, thank you for attending, and hope you have some positive experiences as you tackle this new dilemma we have in higher ed.
Well, any questions for Mark or Regina? Well, comments have been very insightful, and yes, indeed it has.
Thank you.
So, okay, so we'll call it a wrap then.